I think that we are at approximately the halfway point of the 100-day challenge. I say I think because, in all honesty, I haven't exactly been counting. Now that I'm posting these from my phone, the way that I track it is different. But I'm pretty confident because I know that the last day of it is November 9th, or like that's when it ends. So, that being said, this week I've been kind of sad. I don't have a great reason or justification as to that. I think part of it is just because I was feeling kind of ill a lot of this week, and I'm not going to pretend to fully understand how this works, but I think that a lot of the time when I was like sick and sad as a kid and just feeling very isolated, that there are certain residual neurological patterns that still weave their way into my emotional state. It's total speculation. I don't know that that's actually true, nor do I fully understand the mechanism behind it, but like it kind of makes sense to me. Or just I'm extra sad. But like I want to say it's not like I'm sad because I don't feel good. Like there's been like this extra existential type of sadness that is pretty few and far between for me these days. Although I will also say that even with that being the case, still like my worst days now are better than my best days were then. So I've come a long way on that front. Anyway, with that being said, this morning I was pretty tired. It would have been really easy to just kind of listen to the podcast that I had downloaded and coast through the morning for a while. And that's sort of what I started to do. But then I just started listening to the song that I've been working on this week, which is called You Don't Know Me. In all honesty, I've been working on it for like 2 weeks. And this one has been the most labor intensive of the songs that I've made this year, for sure. But I think it also sounds the best, too, of like, I'm really starting to get a sense of my options for my workflow. And I don't think I'm going to do all of them exactly like I did this one, but I think it really is coming together quite well. And then as soon as I did that, as soon as I was like hearing it, then my brain is like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. And so it was interesting because then from there, I went and worked on the revisions that I wanted to make to each of the versions of that song. And I'm not saying it's 100% done yet, but I'm pretty sure it's close. I just have to listen back and see how it came out. But then after that, I played the piano for like 45 minutes and just practicing singing, of which I've also realized now that this may sound extremely obvious to anybody who's remotely familiar with music, but forgive me, like it is deliriously silly for me to try to sing without like playing along to a reference pitch, at least for me, because my pitch is certainly not perfect, but it's getting a lot better. And now that I'm practicing with the piano, like, oh, it's so much better for writing music, and it gives me a lot more clarity on how to approach it. So that's been really good. But I didn't set out with the intention to practice for 45 minutes. I just started doing it. And I think that that basic idea has been where I have found a lot of success in this idea of prioritizing momentum over motivation, right? If I had had the conversation with myself in my head of like, all right, you're going to sit down and play piano for 45 minutes, I don't think I would have even sat down there at all. Like that just wasn't going to happen. But when I just crack the door open a little bit, it becomes so much easier to just walk through it. Like I'm using inertia in my favor rather than against me, because like the way that inertia has worked against me is especially with like scrolling, where it's trying to suck you in and trying to keep your attention for as long as possible. And so I've done a lot of things to disrupt that process and make it so that it's really hard for me to scroll, which has been largely a success, I feel. And then using the more positive side of that, like as soon as I started listening to my music this morning, that's where my focus has been. And all of the other nonsense that was running through my head, everything, like, it just goes away because then my brain has something to be actively engaged in. And so I think that's really interesting. And to kind of bring this video full circle, what's fascinating is, I think it's arguable, but I think you could make a pretty reasonable argument that my median video quality has gotten worse over the course of the last month. And a part of the 100-day challenge of what I set out to do was to get better at this. I think there are certain things that I'm doing better. Like, I think overall my lighting setup is better. I think that I have a few things just structurally in how I set up my studio that are going to be better moving forward. But there are other things that I'm putting less work into. Like, I stopped messing with the thumbnails and stuff, of where I find it much more easier to be consistent just posting from my phone. And I think I could make thumbnails on my phone too. It's just not at the top of my priority list right now. But I think what I'm really getting at here is, like, even though for the 100-day challenge, I wouldn't say there's been a dramatic improvement in the quality of my videos, but I've been pretty consistent with it. Like, so for example, I didn't post the one yesterday. I filmed it. I just forgot. So I got to do better with that. But, like, I've been doing this consistently. So I'll post these ones back to back. But anyway, the consistency has been there. But I think the more important aspect of this has been, it's grounded me in being okay with iterating and just putting the work out there. And in a strange way, this has really helped me to create a ton of momentum. So where before I was kind of just putting off making these videos and launching this channel, now I'm not really putting it off so much as it's just not the top of my priority list, and I'm trying to approach it in the way that has the lowest overhead so that I can focus on making music, which is the thing that is the most compelling to me at this point in time. And I think that I can find maybe a slightly better balance of finding ways to make these more consistent and more engaging, for sure. But I'm actually pretty happy with what I've done on the Learning Every Moment channel so far, understanding it in the context of the bigger picture. And that's because it has helped me to create a tremendous amount of momentum. Like, I'm actually just doing the work now, and that's how I spend most of my day most of the time. And that's what I wanted. And so, like, in that way, even at the halfway point, this experiment has been a massive success. And part of what I wanted to see too with this 100-day challenge, and obviously I haven't finished it yet, but, like, can I post every day? I think there's no reason to say that the answer is no. And if I view it as like, oh no, I forgot to post the one yesterday, the whole thing is over, I have to start over from scratch, like, that's just stupid. Nobody's asking me if that, or nobody's asking that of me. But, like, that defeats the purpose, right? Like, I did film. I'll post it today, and it's gonna be okay. And, like, I don't need to be overly stressed out about all these arbitrary lines that I draw in the sand, which is something that I definitely tend to do. And instead, I need to focus on, like, what's actually going to move the needle from here? What is the most meaningful contribution that I can make at this moment in my life? And if I zoom out, how does making that meaningful contribution help me acquire the skills that are going to be the most relevant to everything else that I want to do? And I think with making music, it's being willing to put myself out there, doing so in a way that is kind of vulnerable for me. And a lot of my songs are kind of dark. And so there are parts of me that has reservations of like putting that out into the world, but the rest of me is like, dude, it's going to be okay. Right? Not everybody's going to understand me all the way. That's okay. And that's part of what this channel is for too. If, like, anybody who does want to see the behind the scenes, anybody who does want to get a sense of who I am as a human being, has that opportunity. And so at this point, to the extent that I can, I've made my peace with the idea that not everybody's going to understand me. Like, why would I have that as an expectation anyway? Like, that's just ridiculous. But I can live with being misunderstood, because it's worth it for me to reach that much smaller subsection of people who do truly care about me and who will truly understand me. And when I frame the trade that way, it's one that I'm taking 100 times out of 100. And so for the remainder of this 100-day challenge, I actually want things to look pretty similar to how they've looked over the past few weeks. I had set the goal of putting out one song a week. I think that overall, that's a good goal, but I'm okay if for, let's call it the next 2-ish months, if it's more like 5 songs in total than hitting one every single week. Because a few things, like one, I'm trying to get ahead on some fronts right now, where I've been working on You Don't Know Me, but I have the next few pretty lined up and nowhere near finished, but ready to roll. And I think that is a good thing to do, because otherwise, if I realize now too that if I just try to do the same song over and over and over again and don't have anything else that is on my brain, then I start to get really frustrated with it, and it starts to feel like a chore rather than something that's fun. But then if I have like a little bit of a palate cleanser of like something to look forward to, something that I can work on next, then that actually brings me a lot more joy when I come back to the one that was feeling tedious. And so, yeah, it's interesting. Then it also motivates me to get that done so I can get working on the next one too. And so that seems to be working well for me. I don't want to get too spread thin on that front though. Like, I see utility in having the recording sessions done and starting to build out some of the generations, but I think I should refrain from starting any sort of like major surgery on a given song until it's like the one that's up to put out, because that's definitely the part that is the most time intensive. And so I think that's a decent workflow, and I'll continue to update that workflow as I go and make it better and better. But yeah, I'm at peace with that right now. And so long as I'm consistently releasing music, even if it's not meeting my arbitrary one a week at the very beginning, totally fine with that. And there are even some things like I've been wanting to re-upload the I Believe tracks, because I have remastered versions of those now, which I don't think it made as big of a difference for the audio quality as I was hoping it might, but they're definitely better than the ones that I have up there. But I've been hesitating to do that because I'm like, well, but then they won't be there, and anybody who's listening to it right now won't have them, and they're gonna be, where did they go? But I would much rather do that now than later. Like, now seems to be the best time to make that happen. Anyway, so I'll get that rolling, and yeah. Is there anything else I need to cover here? I think overall I'm in a really good place, and I know that it just takes time. And like I talked about with the momentum earlier, yes, like on a day-to-day basis, that's a way better framing than like trying to tell myself that I need to do like this massive amount of work of just get started. And then my brain wants to do the work anyway. That's the silly part. Is like as soon as I'm going, I have a hard time stopping. But it's just like the getting started is what impedes me a lot of the time, or I should say has historically. But there have definitely been times of where I've just had the clarity on what I need to be working on. And then as soon as I'm doing it, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's way easier to keep going than to stop. And so again, using that inertia to my advantage. But I think as I zoom out too, that this principle becomes even more relevant, because the more and more meaningful work that I do, the more that my capacity for meaningful work improves, and the more that I expand my network, the more that I'm just making meaningful connections with people. And then not only are my skills being upgraded, but my opportunity landscape is being upgraded at the same time. And so I'm excited for where this is going. Baby steps, but I'm taking them.